Hi everyone and welcome. I've got my very first interview and I'm so glad to introduce my friend from the ship days, Mike Heyworth. And your role, Mike, was shop manager when on my contract anyway. But I believe you've done a few other roles on cruise ships as well.
Yeah. So, hello everybody. To start with, I did. I've been on ships about 6 years and started off in the shops as a jewelry watch specialist. Progressed through the ranks of management or to management throughout the times, and then went across as a short stint as a guest relations manager with Morella. Pandemic hit. Long story short, that job wasn't there anymore, and then back over to the shops recently, working out of Greece. Was sailing around Greece for a company called Celestial Crystal was a ship I was on. So that was nice to get away into the sun for a while when everyone else is unfortunately stuck at home in the crap times, eh?
Was that ship around? So that was around Greece just post pandemic when lockdown lifted. Was that the itinerary? It wasn't the UK ones we've been seeing of late.
No, so it's a Greek line, and it was just out of Piraeus for the port for Athens. Majority of people on there were like American or Greek themselves, so there wasn't any British on there at all. Because I think Greece was still on the restricted list, or still is, either amber or red at the time, so it wasn't even possible to go for them. So yeah, it was just sailing around Greece with maybe there's a lower capacity, about 50-60% people on. So, but normally there's 900, there was 450, 500 people. So, yeah, it was lower capacity, full of masks and restrictions. But it was, we went out in June, and we recently finished beginning of September. So I've been on a couple of weeks now.
Right. Do you know, it's funny, we'll touch more on the pandemic a bit later on in the interview, but really the aim of me doing these chats with whether it's my friends, current seafarers or ex-seafarers, is really to give people an insight into cruise ship life from the workers' point of view, because not many people know A, how hard it is for us and the hours we do put in, but B, the wonderful travel and life we have. And I think people can be very guilty of just seeing the Instagram life and, oh, you wake up in Barbados one morning, the next morning you're in the Dominican. But tell us a bit more about the hours that we all put in and the unsociable hours, I guess, as a cruise ship workers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always like you say that your friends and family, they always see the glamour. And my counter to that is always I just remind them that for 6 months that I'm away, we don't get a day off, not one day off. So we work in every single day, sometimes up to 14 hours. So if there's in the shops, particularly if it's a sea day, so if our day is full at sea and no port stop, then we will work from 9 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Look, obviously a couple of breaks for lunches and dinner and things, but we will work, you know, 10 hours, probably 9, 10 hours full that day. And when you're doing sea days, especially like crossings and things like that, you can have a number of them in a row. So you could have literally a week full of sea days. So you're doing 70 hours that week. There is a flip side. It can be, the latest one that was on was literally just ports. So we did maybe 5, 6 hours a day instead, but still 7 hours, 7 days a week. So it's that's the counter to it. we
Yeah.
do we do work hard, we play hard, but it isn't all the glamour, the sunshine and the cocktails on the beach. It's not always that. It is a lot of that, but it's not always that.
Yeah, I think I always used to say to family and friends that when they finish their working day, they go home, they sit down, they do whatever they want to relax, go to the gym, go on a walk, see family and friends, and close the curtains essentially. And don't, okay, you might get the odd email pop up on your phone and you might do a bit of work, but on the ship there's no closing the curtains and having that time away, because you're working with these people, you're socializing with these people, and you're traveling with these people, and sometimes you even sharing a cabin with these people. It's right, did you have to
Mm.
share a cabin in the early days?
I did in the early days, yeah. When I was a jeweler, I did share my cabin, which ultimately made me go into management because they get their own cabin. So there's always the perks of kind of going up there. But yes, recently, but the kind of things, the positives to that is you meet friends for life with these cabin mates, because literally last week I was at a wedding for my first cabin mate, and I was his best man.
Oh,
So
lovely.
that's the kind of friendships and things that you get. You get lasting friendships. You might only meet people for a few weeks, myself and you included. That's the kind of we met for what 2-3 weeks for a crossing.
Yeah, I think it was about 3.5 weeks, the crossing. And when we say crossing, it's usually a transatlantic, isn't it? Across.
Yeah.
I think I flew out to Barbados on that one and ended up, I think, in Croatia or something. So I
Hmm.
want to say that was the crossing. But yeah, those 4 weeks, and that's another question I want to ask you about. What I never got on cruise ships is 1 week on a ship for a worker would feel like 1 month, wouldn't it?
Oh
And
yeah.
4 weeks would feel like 4 months. So I feel like I was with you for half a year and not 1 month, because
Yeah.
there's so much happens, isn't there?
Yeah, it's very intense. It's like one second, 1 week, 1 month. It can always be just the same amount of time, isn't it? It's so intense. You're just in this bubble.
Yeah.
Nothing else really exists outside of this bubble. Because, like you say before, it's full on. You living, you're working, you're eating, you're socializing. Everything is with the same group of people. I've been lucky. I've picked up some really good friends out of it. Some really good lasting relationships and friends. So it's definitely the pros outweigh the cons massively when it comes to that. As long as they still do, I'll keep doing it. That was my mantra. Once the cons start creeping up, then it might be time to call it a day.
No, you know what? That's exactly what I feel, Mike. I have very fond memories of, I mean, I'm on land now, so to speak. When you speak as a seafarer, you're like, oh, you're working on land. Yes. Um, but, I have so many fond memories. And like you say, those friends for life, it really does, it does happen, because you go through so much together, and, you're traveling the world, you're working together in a really tough job at times. I mean, we were on the entertainment team. So I think the reason it felt like 1 week felt like 1 month was because you cram so much into one day. Our call time as such might be, say, 10 a.m. to get out on the deck and do a quiz. And then before we know it, we might have done a morning doing the entertainment on the deck. And then all of a sudden, you're out exploring Guadalupe. And then you're back on ship, and then you're getting changed, then you're at dinner, and then you're back on stage, and we'd finish at like midnight, 1 a.m. That, and then you're still wired, so you don't want to go to bed, you can't go to bed, you're kind of drunk on tiredness, but the adrenaline's going, you've just come off stage, and then you might go to the crew bar for a drink, and then before you know it, you're like, wow, I've actually crammed so much into this one day, and so much has happened. So I think that's why. But speaking of crew bar, I'm going to ask you about the crew bar, because people
Oh,
who may have gone on cruises and not experienced life as a seafarer or a crew member, what's the crew bar like? What sort of vibe is it? Is it glamorous? Explain to everyone what the crew bar's like.
well, it's far from glamorous. I'll tell you that. God, how it's your favorite dive pub. That's the way to put it. I think it's that one. The same faces in the same places every time you go in it. But it's couldn't be had the best days in there, the best nights in there. Cheap drinks, big stories. It's one of them. You can have parties in there where there's 100 people crammed into a room for probably comfortably there's 30 room for 30. And then you've got times where you're the only one in there. And it's just one of those things. Everyone passes by same time every night. They finish this time, and you just know what time it is by the person that's walked through the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really it's a strange place to try and explain, but it when they call it a bar, yeah, it's it's an old man's social club. That's the thing. That's
exactly
the great.
what it is. That's what makes it brilliant, the character
Absolutely.
of it. And I think, like you say, you knew when so and so were clocking off on their shift, they're like, oh, they'll be in half an hour because they've been on night watch tonight. If it's one of the officers or one of the entertainment team, we know they come off stage about midnight. And I think what I loved about ship life as well is, with sort of obviously your department in working in the shops, you know, you've got your little group of people who work in there. You've obviously got the entertainment team, you've got the officers, you know, you've got all kind of different departments. But what I loved is there was never a clique. You never felt like you couldn't go and sit with another department. If you were on your own in your crew bar and everyone else had gone to bed or gone to watch a film, you know, you knew that you could sit with someone and have a good chat and not be afraid that they wouldn't want to welcome you into that group. Tell us a bit more about that and how nice that felt, really, because I think that's important with cruise ship life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's it kind of depends on the ship and the company you're with, because the first ship I worked for, or the first ship I won, they actually segregated officers and staff.
Oh, right.
So they had the officers' wardroom, and they had the crew bar, and it was kind of like you had to have an invitation to go into the officers' ward, but that's where kind of we were in a grey area as being staff rather than crew. So it was like the concessions, shop team, spa team, casino, things like that were kind of a little grey area between the two. So you wasn't really that welcome in one, and you also felt a little bit out of place in the other. Okay. But then when I moved into a different company and it was just the one bar for everybody, that was when it was like, you know, everybody's just fine. You know, it's, if you're having a drink with someone at the bar, you could be talking to a cabin steward or, you know, a safety officer. You know, it's not there wasn't that seclusion and that segregation. It was nice just to sit down with somebody, ask them how the day was, and it's just, yeah, everybody's is. You imagine there's so many different nuances involved in people's jobs. I reckon you could have a series on a cruise ship and a different episode every day to cover a different department, and it'd probably be. I shouldn't say this. I should actually take this to Netflix, maybe, but you know, it definitely. It could work.
Cruise, when you watch Cruising with Jane McDonald on Channel 5, I tell you, it's lovely, and I'm like, wow, this looks so amazing, and I'm thinking, is this what it looks like to the guests? It's crazy because, especially when we were working for Morella, you know, we had to have that constant smiling, and that's the same a lot of the time with any company. I do understand that, and that's what guests want to see. If you're having a bad day, that has to be left in the cabin, and you know, we have to keep that smile on and be there and customer facing, which leads me on to the next question about you transitioning really from shop manager, when I knew you on the contract we were on, to, like you say, you moved departments, didn't you?
Yeah. So the shops is fantastic for experience. It's absolutely amazing because when you're in port, that's all your time. As long as you're not got anything pressing to do, like a stock count or something like that, that's your time. You can't open, duty-free laws. You're not allowed to open. So that time is yours. So my first two contracts were world cruises. Wow. I was extremely lucky. We'd see all parts of the world. So you get, I got in the first 3 years with that company was, you know, I ticked off over 50 countries, all pretty much all the continents, and yeah, it was incredible. So there was a part of it that the experience side was kind of ticked off, and it was like I'd managed to see what I wanted to see. A couple of the wonders of the world, for instance, like going over to Rio and things like that, and it became then a choice of, do I stay in this, do I try something different, different challenge, and then once you get to shop manager, your next step up is going back to land and being like an area manager or working for the company in a different role. Yet if you go over to the hotel side of it, which is like the guest relations manager that I got, there's then the hotel manager, then the general manager on top of that. So you got more of a a step up at sea. So if I did want to stay at sea and make the career out of it, then that was the best way of doing it. Just to step over into the hotel side of it. So yeah, it's that was the reason. It then became a job. I know that's a bit silly going like 3 or 4 years in, but yeah, it then became a job rather than just the experience and the traveling the world getting paid for it kind of thing.
Yeah, I think as well, I don't know whether it's an age thing or it's just a general, I want to keep the old brain cells, from stop them from going grey. You want new challenges, don't you, in your work?
Yeah.
And I think if you're willing to say, right, I am living at sea and working at sea is for me, but I fancy a new challenge, then brilliant. And I know a lot of seafarers have gone across and they're just getting a feel for what they're like, and maybe they were going to stay in that area, maybe they think actually it's not for me, I'm going to go back or try something else. And that's lovely, isn't it? I mean, you get to chat to people in other departments and you find out their agencies as such, as in who they work for and who you can contact if you fancy having a go at that. And it's quite straightforward really, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think it became a little bit with the shops in particularly. No aspersions or anything, but they are one of the lowest paid in the concessions. So their eyes are opened to certain like other jobs and on the ship. So I think at one point our company that I was working for actually had a clause put in the contract. It's like no poaching. They can't poach the staff while they're on contract because they were losing quite a lot over. So it was so it was a bit difficult in that respect because there's a little bit of like because concessions make up such a big part of the cruise lines. It's amazing. Like Marella, like you say, we were on. When I went over to guest relations manager, I worked for Marella, and on the ship of 800 people, there was probably only 20 people on there that were actually employed by Marella directly.
Oh, wow.
So the majority of people are obviously on these concessions. So many different companies making up the hotel group, like the cabin stewards, the restaurant, bars, and things like that. They were all one company. The shops are a different company. The salons a different company. The casino's a different company. The entertainment is a different company. It's all outsourced and outrun. So, like you say, it's there's so many people going across, and it causes the ructions within the companies. It was quite interesting time that really when that was happening.
I want to talk now a bit about, we can't not speak about the pandemic really, and we know how hard it hit a lot of industries, but really did hit hard on the cruise ship industry. Obviously a lot of guests lost their holidays, but also cruise ship workers, seafarers lost their livelihoods overnight. And how did you feel when that all happened? Were you on land at the time on a break, or were you at sea when that all happened?
I was at sea, so I joined my second contract as GRM, guest relations manager. Sorry, that was in February of 2020. The pandemic then obviously hit around March time. I think we got rid of our guests at the end of March. Beginning of March. Sorry. So it's I was on the ship for about 4 or 5 weeks. Sorry, before it actually hit. We were on the ship ourselves for probably about 6 weeks without guests, waiting for somebody to let us in. So we were around the Canary Islands at the time. So we were off Gran Canaria. We were floating off Gran Canaria for a while, and it was trying to organise flights, trying to organise people with repatriation. They wouldn't let us in to the port to dock. So like the likes of getting goods, luxury goods, like and toiletries and things like that was quite difficult. You wouldn't, if you wasn't already stocked up, you were in a bit of bother really. But it was it was tough. Like you say, it cost a lot of people a lot of things. Me in particular, when I got home, it was like we didn't know if it was going to be shut for a month or 2 months, and obviously it's ended up being 18 months. In that time, I lost a job as GRM. It was like the company Marella went down, lost a couple of ships themselves, and then there's only so many jobs for so many people, and there's unfortunately my space wasn't there anymore. So it was kind of like, rather than me wait and hang on for something that might be another year or so in the making, it was like, I'll tell you now that there isn't anything in the near future. So I went looking for something else. At the start of the pandemic, I got home and I ended up at Amazon, packing boxes in Amazon, which was for somebody who is so customer centric and speaking to people every single day, to go from that to on a production line just putting products in boxes, and it was the worst thing that I've ever done, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
It was horrendous. I hated every single minute of it, and it was just horrible. But I had a certain contract for that, so like after 6 months I could leave, and I did as soon as I possibly could, and ended up at I ended up doing some telecommunications preparation work for broadband fiber optic. So it's kind of like you just find what you can. Never done anything like that before. It was just putting a rod down a hole and pulling the rope back through, ready for wiring to go through for fiber optic broadband. So
Well,
it
that
was
is so different. Goodness me.
exactly, yeah. It's going from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Never worked with my hands that much before, and then in a 2 feet of snow in Scotland trying to do this, and it's like, oh man,
Goodness
it
me.
was drastic, yeah. And then from there, I was kind of uh, I don't know, just kind of saying like I may be on land for a while now, so I was looking more for something that was back into my wheelhouse. The industry was opening up a little bit more.
Yeah.
I managed to get a job on a holiday park.
Oh, brilliant.
In the kind of GRM role. So it was looking after the owners of the caravans on site, and the guest experience of anyone, the holidaymakers. And it was okay. It was down in Great Yarmouth, so it was a big move. I'm obviously probably tell from my voice in Manchester, so it's a long way from home. But obviously being away all the time, it doesn't make it that much of a difference anymore. But so I did that for a couple of months until I got the opportunity to go back to sea. Now that could have been my long-term job, and it would have been absolutely fine. But I got the opportunity to go back to sea, and I couldn't. I just missed it that much. I couldn't pass it up.
So what did you do? Did you go back to shop manager on the ship you've just done? Is that the one where you did the Greece itinerary?
Yeah, that's right. So it literally started. I had a mate down in Ipswich who was then joining back to ship, and I met him for a drink before he went, and we started talking. I'm like, oh, do you know what? I really want to get back into it now. And he's like, well, and I thought with the management side of it, I eventually I'd like to get back into the hotel side.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be not tied in, because that's not the right word for it, but I didn't want to be too relied upon. So I wasn't really looking to get back into management, because if I ended up leaving straight away, not after one contract, I didn't feel like I was letting anyone down. If that makes any sense. So I was like, my background is jewelry, so if there's any jeweler positions going, I'd go back. So I got back in touch with someone that I knew from the company, my old area manager, and I was like, because at the time it was just when the Indian variant of COVID was prevalent, and a lot of the jewelry experts from had come from India. So I asked the question, are you struggling with these because the Indian variant? He's like, he came back. He's absolutely. Are you interested? And I'm like, yeah, I can be. So he was actually out of the business himself. So he got in touch with the guy in charge, and he was like, right, he's got something for you. He'll talk to you tomorrow. So I rock up at work at Great Yarmouth. I'm in the car on the phone to my old managers, plotting my return back to sea, and he was like, I need a manager to go out to Celestial in Greece. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, no problem, let's do it. Yeah, it was fun. It was a great, I'm very appreciative that I was managed to get back, especially not especially because I left the place in the first place. I went for an opportunity and they understood that, but it's the nature of the beast is that you've got so many friends out there. It's it's kind of nice to be able just to lean on. So I could get away for 6 months. We could both help each other out. I wanted to get away, and they needed somebody. That's the kind of
Perfect
thing you got to look at.
So you did that 6 months, did you? 6 months out there, did you say?
Well, I did 3 months because I had to come home for the wedding last week. So I already had that planned in that I would be out. So I left in June.
Yeah.
And then we finished at the end of August, and we had to offload all the stock because the ship was actually closing for the season. Right. So they would normally go through to about Christmas time.
Yeah.
But I think there was a bit of thing with the Greek authorities in America. I think they were upgrading their level, and a lot of guests came from America. So I think it was kind of like a bit of a preemptive strike to say if we don't get American, we can't, we'll lose too much money. So they made the decision to stop. Yeah. And then they'll start again next year in spring summer season. So brilliant. We had to offload all the stock, get everything on pallets and take it off, and it's intense. It's intense. So
about the feel of, I haven't been on a cruise ship post-pandemic, and I know a lot of people won't have done. If they are wanting to book a cruise as a guest, how is it? Does it feel safe? I mean, I don't have to mention the amount of sanitizer we saw pre-pandemic. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. It would just become a natural habit, the sanitizer thing, like we do now. So we were already in that kind of routine of doing that. But how does it feel? Is there people still wearing masks? Is there distancing in place? What's the general vibe at the moment?
Yeah, so it was all still restrictions, quite heavy restrictions. So people to fly, everyone had a PCR test anyway. And then before they got onto the ship, they had another test, rapid test. Us as crew, we were tested twice a week. And yeah, like masks were wore in public areas. Hand sanitizer, like you say, is doubled up, is everywhere. Social distancing, you can only sit in certain areas. And yeah, it was kind of like what you saw at the beginning when you got back into a restaurant. So there's arrows everywhere. Certain seats are blocked off. You can't sit here, and then tables blocked off. Things like that. So yeah. It was refreshing to see. You felt safe, because you saw the efforts that everybody were going to. So if you're always taking that little bit of a risk anyway to go away in these times, but I personally, I would feel more than happy to go on a holiday like that, looking at the level of effort that they're putting in and things. So yeah, definitely. You had the another thing, you had the temperature station, so everyone had to check the temperature every single day as well, without fail. So there was a lot of effort put into to stop any potential outbreak. So yeah, it was really refreshing to see that. Yeah.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. I have to mention, because you mentioned about sitting, one of the rules we had, especially on our ship, was you couldn't sit with more than 4 of the crew members, could you? Yeah. That was a rule, wasn't it?
No, yeah.
Explain a bit more about that, because people find that bizarre when I tell them.
Yeah, there's crazy little crew rules. You can't sit in more than a group of 4. You're too intimidating to people if you're in a pack, I think. And to be fair, if you look in the crew bar when there was more than 4 people, the noise that they made, it was you can imagine you would be off-putting to people, they're enjoying their holiday, enjoying quiet drink, and you've got 5, 6, 7 entertainers that say they were the most raucous.
Don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, there's always the rule of 4 was one that was so contentious. It was like, what, if you put one table in between you, it's absolutely fine. So you got 8 people talking over one table in between anyway. So it's crazy. There's a lot of things that are outdated on cruises in terms of rules and regulations, but it's funny. It's things like that. Definitely.
Just before we finish up, I have to ask you, this is going to be a regular question on this series. What's your favourite memory of working on a cruise ship? It can be when you first started in the shops, it can be a recent memory, it can be a travel memory, or it can be a funny memory that happened with maybe a guest on the ship.
Oh God. That's too difficult. That's to put it into one lasting memory is no. That's such a loaded question. It's so hard to imagine. So, favorite travel, for instance, I went on to in the world cruise. We visited the Falkland Islands.
Oh wow!
So being on a beach with penguins everywhere, you're about 10 foot away from penguins. That was cool. That was something that just you'd never be able to do it. You know, I wouldn't ever go on holiday to a penguin, you know, a penguin beach. So those you get those kind of things. I don't know, the craziest things probably happened. I nearly missed the ship in Korea. So we were in Korea. We had we went over to a temple on the other side of the island, and we got back plenty of time. We got back, and they were running shuttle buses from the company. So we got there for the second to last one, and we were like, you know, we checked, you know, we got plenty of time. Yep. So we went, you know, ship food isn't great, so we took every opportunity we could to eat off. And there was a McDonald's around the corner. We were like,
I love that on a cruise ship. We're craving a McDonald's. He's bizarre, but he's very true.
Do you know what? When I'm home, I don't eat it at all. No. You know, it's just not nice. There's so much other opportunities, but it's just one of them things. It's just like you just crave something. And so we went there. We got something to eat quickly. We got back to the bus, and then we sat on the bus for like 20 minutes, and we're a bit conscious that it's getting to the time. We're like, this bus is definitely going back to the ship, right? We were the last people to get onto that ship. Our manager was waiting on the gangway for us. He'd been asked to collect our things, pretty much to, you know, if we weren't there in the next 5 minutes, we were in Korea. We were make your own way home from Korea, please. You know, that was that was pretty mental. Yeah. It's funny when I first left. I mean, I left when I was 31. And my dad dropped me off at the airport, and as old as I was at the time, he's like, do you know what? If you need to come home at any time, just let me know. I think if I'd have phoned him from Korea and went, Dad, I need to come home from Korea, I think he might have gone, oh, you're staying there, son. Sorry, pal.
I can't help you out on this one.
Yeah. I meant from Malaga when it's like $7.99 to take you home, but you know.
That's belting. Oh my, honestly, that is hilarious. I've heard it all now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and
you're welcome.
Lovely little insight into cruise ship life as a seafarer. And yeah, what a way to kick off the series with a Manc as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike, and I'll see you soon, love.
You're very welcome, Gemma. Thanks.
Bye.